Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBingeIT. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are on Season 3, Episode 21, Before and After. This episode aired April 9th, 1997. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, which was Favorite Son and Harry and the Broads?
No.
Well, I don't know. It was terrible. I need to keep a list of all the terrible episodes of all the shows that we watch. And then at some point, we'll have to put them all together and see which is the worst. But it was bad.
Really interesting science fiction concept turned into an adolescent male fantasy story.
Well, turned into something that was more appropriate for TV in the 60s. Right?
Well, might have been, yeah.
I'm not saying it was really ever great, but it's more like something they would have done in the 60s.
Yeah.
And it
Right,
just
yeah,
felt
I get
more appropriate for the time period.
Yeah.
Of course, not for women. It's bad for women all the time.
Yeah,
But we don't care about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a time period that's a good one in.
No. I was worried about this episode because the title, Before and After, is also a 1996 movie that is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Oh, which one was that?
Meryl Streep and I think Liam Neeson. It's really bad.
Oh.
Fortunately, they are not related.
I'll admit, I've never seen that movie.
Yeah, no reason to. I mean, you think it's going to be good. You're going in with Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
No. She's made some clunkers, too. It's not her fault. She's not bad in it. It's just a bad movie.
Hey, she made Silkwood. All is forgiven.
Yeah. The Silkwood is not my favorite Meryl Streep movie. It's good, but she gives a better performance in a few other things. And also, I love Postcards from the Edge.
Yes, you do.
For very different reasons.
Yeah.
Also, Sophie's Choice is very good, but a bit grim.
Oh, I find that a little bit unwatchable, not because of performances, but because the story is just so traumatic.
Well, it absolutely rips you to shreds by giving you this sort of false sense of, I don't know,
Normalcy?
Security with these characters. Yeah. And then at the end, it just goes, oh, did you think this was a happy story? Let me cut your heart out. And they're also good in it. That
right.
Yeah, it's
part of the reason why that movie, I would describe that movie as harrowing.
Yeah, it's almost traumatizing to watch.
Yeah.
Well, this one is not traumatizing.
That's good.
And it's also not terrible, like the couple, I guess, 2 of the last 3 that we watched were not good. So we're going the right direction now. And I have the notes this week, so
the ship is on a positive heading. We're looking good. I'm feeling confident.
I hope so. Although I will say I liked it a lot more the second time through. Like, I don't know, something, I think because I was a little confused. Time travel-y stuff is very confusing, I think. And when you first watch it, you can just go, wait a minute. What about this and what about that? But then the second time through, I went, oh, okay, all right, now that makes sense. So yeah, I think you got to watch it a couple times to really absorb it, or at least I did.
I think that's because you have a lot in common with Captain Janeway's view of time travel and Mars O'Brien's.
Yeah, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be in the middle of it. But I like the shows.
Some of my favorite Star Trek stories are time travel related.
I'm like Janeway because what's the episode where she says like she made a pact with herself to avoid a time paradox?
Yes.
It's like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, I think that falls under wishful thinking.
Yeah. Well, should we get started?
Yes, we should. We've probably gone like 10 minutes now. We've lost half our listeners because we're not talking about Star Trek.
And I've also started to melt because summer has begun and the podcast booth is heating up fast. In the cold open, we open with the voice of the doctor saying, activate the biotemporal chamber. We see from the perspective of someone in sickbay looking up at a young kid, a blonde woman in a Starfleet uniform, and the doctor. But the doctor has hair.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
Quite a lot of hair. Yep.
The doctor's trying to get everyone to leave the room so he can continue his treatment, but the woman says, she's my mother and I'm not going to leave. Eventually, everyone does leave, and the doctor tells the person in the biobed, you're the finest friend I've ever had.
Oh.
And then he says, we're going to begin in approximately 5 minutes. But there's a flash of white light, and we are no longer in the biochamber, but the patient is now just lying on a biobed. And the kid from the previous scene comes up to her, calling her grandma. Turns out Grandma is Kes in some old age makeup and an even worse wig than normal. I mean, this wig is bad. She looks at the kid and appears to be completely confused.
Yeah.
And we go into the opening credits.
Now, first things here, I think there's actually another tie back to the original Star Trek, because I think the Doctor is wearing William Shatner's wig from T.J. Hooker.
Oh, I don't think so. Did you go and look? I think he has a lot more hair.
I just totally made that up.
Oh, I think he has a lot more hair than T.J. Hooker.
Were you worried here when you saw the Doctor? Were you thinking this was going to be one of the evil carnations of the Doctor going, I'm just going to press the button and we're going to quietly put her to sleep?
Oh, no. I did not think that, but the hair was troubling. Kes when she's in her old age makeup in this episode, she so reminds me of someone and I just can't figure out who.
Oh.
And it's like really bugging me.
Nobody sprung to mind for me.
I don't know. I could never place it.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else will figure it out and send me an email. After the credits, the kid says he's finally finished making her birthday present. And old Kes is really confused, saying she doesn't know who he is. The kid says he's Andrew, her grandson. Andrew calls the doctor over, calling the doctor Dr. Van Gogh. This is news to us.
Yep. Who are these people?
I know. It turns out Kes doesn't recognize anyone, nor does she know where she is. Eventually, she does seem to remember the doctor saying she is his finest friend, but he says, well, I'm not sure I've ever said that exactly, even though he did just say that exactly about 20 seconds ago. She says she remembers being in a biotemporal chamber and the doctor was about to activate it, but the doctor says, you're confused. I haven't finished building it yet.
Ugh.
She can't remember anything else, and the doctor sends the kid out to get his family. In comes Chakotay, and the doctor calls him Captain.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Well, the kid calls him Captain first as he's running out.
Either way, calling Chuckles Captain is very bad news for me.
Yes, you know something is wrong. Hey, but, okay, I'm going to defend Chakotay. I think he holds himself as Captain really well in this episode.
Yeah, because he's not really in it. It's a small part, really.
Yeah, but I felt he got the brief of a Starfleet captain. And dare I say it, I find him more convincing in this episode as a captain than I did in Prodigy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, sorry, the good Aaron. We had a lot to say about Chakotay in Prodigy.
Yeah.
But this is a result of being a person who's watched a lot of Star Trek, because the fact that the doctor had hair made me not too worried about Chakotay being captain. I was like, we are like in an alternate universe or an alternate timeline. Something is very wrong.
Yes.
Janeway is okay somewhere.
I'm expecting when we watched this originally, I bet the first thing we went to is, oh, this is parallels.
Maybe. We probably thought everything was parallels because we liked it so much.
Yeah, it's such a great episode.
The doctor reports to Chuckles that Kes's amnesia is pretty bad. We learn that she's 9 years old and that she's entered something called the Morologium, which seems to progress quite quickly because just a few weeks ago she was acting normally. They talk about the biotemporal chamber. The doc is afraid that it's not tested enough, but it's their only choice at this point, though it may only buy her another year. Kes says she's really cold, and the doc confirms her temp has dropped 2 degrees below normal. The doctor doesn't know why, and then we get another flash of light, and Kes wakes up in her quarters, in bed, and she sees a picture of herself looking young and holding a baby next to the bed.
I think we need to address the biotemporal chamber. No idea if it'll work. This is classic Starfleet medical procedure.
Yeah.
Let's test it live. What's the worst that can happen? Maybe a little brain damage? This is fine.
Yeah. Janeway would have said, how much brain damage? It's fine. I mean, yeah, I agree that it's wild to think that first of all, you come up with some idea in the last sort of days of this person's life of something that you're going to build, and it involves time. What are you doing?
Well, we see that there were unforeseen consequences, which seems to happen like in most of these things. You know, and what's funny is, do you remember there was a TNG episode where Dr. Crusher was dealing with another doctor who basically was testing procedures on real people live and killing them. I can't remember the name of the episode. And she was horrified by this. And this sort of makes me laugh of like, does this mean Beverly Crusher is like the outlier?
I think in many ways we were to believe that Dr. Crusher was an outlier.
Yeah.
So maybe, because it did seem a little bit like Pulaski was a little fast and loose with some stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Pulaski was the first true spiritual successor to the original Bones.
Yeah. But we mentioned in a previous episode that, especially here on Voyager, there's only so much testing they could do.
Right.
They're in a closed environment. They don't have other people or
anyone to
complicated lab equiment, or they can't compare studies. So all they can do is kind of test on themselves, though I would argue that doesn't mean you should.
You should, yeah. I mean, it's the aspect of, there's a large aspect of improvisation, and the needs of the moment override everything else.
Right. Well, Kes hears some voices in the other room, including Andrew, saying that he's almost finished with Grandma's present. Kes exits the bedroom and finds the blonde woman and the kid out in the other room, and they ask her about her nap. But Kes asks where she is, because she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And also, she asks who the young woman is. The woman asks Andrew to go and get his father and grandfather and meet them in sickbay. And we learn here that the young woman is Kes's daughter, and her name is Linus. She starts walking Kes to sickbay, and Kes tells her what she remembers about them, but it's all things that we've seen as viewers, but Linus has not seen. In sickbay, the doctor says morologium has set in, and this is the final phase of an Ocampan's lifespan. In now comes Tom and Harry, and we learn Tom is Kes's husband, which is very confusing. Kes doesn't remember this at all, like the rest of us watching. The doctor tells Tom his plan is to use the temporal bed to push her cells back to an earlier stage of entropic decay and buy her some time. Linus is not a fan. She says her mother has always accepted her 9-year lifespan, and she wouldn't want to extend her life with extraordinary measures, especially in her current state of decay.
Right.
Tom and Linus argue, and then Harry steps in, calling Linus sweetheart. This is a tangled story of people with not enough choices of who to marry on board a ship. And it's like, okay, this is confusing.
Now, this part totally reminded me of Parallels, where you learn Deanna and Worf are a couple.
Yeah. Kes interrupts the argument to say there's something happening to her and that it is not a delusion. Andrew sticks up for Kes, but she gets cold again and we get another jump before anyone else believes her.
So as soon as you start hearing the word temporal, you just know you're in for some time travel.
Yep.
Chronotons, temporal, this is going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Now we jump to Neelix bringing out a cake, and everyone is singing for She's a Jolly Good Fellow, because we couldn't yet sing Happy Birthday on TV for free.
Which is
we can now.
Absolutely ridiculous, but anyway.
I always wondered why they would sing that song, because we never sang that song anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, it was because...
copyright trolling.
Yeah. This is Kes's 9th birthday. Memory Alpha says there are 10 candles on this cake, but I could only count 9, so I don't know what it was talking about.
Interesting.
Anyway, they convince a confused Kes to blow out the candles. We see Neelix is in a Starfleet uniform, saying he's a security officer. Lieutenant Tuvok is now Commander Tuvok, but he's still not thrilled with Neelix's existence. Let alone being a security officer.
Did you notice as well, Tuvok actually cracked a joke where he said he could always resign and return to the site of his previous glories and looks around the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's something that's happened. Tuvok has gained a sense of humor or a sense of mockery, I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's very Vulcan, because really it's just mockery and saying, please get out of my life.
Okay. For Neelix to be in the security officer role with Tuvok's consent, as he's now effectively the first officer to Captain Chakotay, Neelix would have to be really good. Vulcans are a little bit demanding at the best of times. So taking over a role that was previously Tuvok's, you'd have to be belt and braces on everything for Tuvok to even consider you competent.
Yeah. But he probably also thinks humans aren't as competent as he is anyway.
Oh.
He has a low opinion of everyone.
You scored 10 out of 10. Not bad for a non-Vulcan.
Right. Kes calls for Andrew, her grandson, and we learned that at this point now he hasn't even started the birthday present that we've been hearing about, so the story seems to be going backwards.
Never do today what you can put off until next week.
Kes tries to get the doctor to listen to her and how she's lost her memories except for the ones that seem to be in the future.
Yeah.
But he suggests it's just the morologium, but then he's shocked that she knows about the biotemporal chamber because he's not told her about it yet. It's like, come on, people, catch up with what's going on here.
Part of this, again, I feel is the people around Kes, they'd have no indication of what is cognitive decline, how to differentiate between real experiences and the fact that she's losing control of her own mind.
Yeah, but it also, I mean, they accept that it happens super quickly.
Yeah.
Because you could also look at this like they're just not believing the old person.
That's true.
Because there apparently was no evidence up to this point that she was having cognitive decline because she did surgery a week before, was it? And the kid says that this is the smartest person he's known. I mean, he hasn't been around that long, but still, now that she's old, did they just not believe her?
Part of the problem is the doctor makes a comment of he doesn't really know enough about what happens with their decline.
Just saying, we fell in a trap quickly.
I'd say that's one way of interpreting.
Well, I have a couple of points about this as we go. Maybe you'll understand why I think that later.
Yeah.
Well, we go to sickbay, and while we've already heard that she's lost 99% and then 98% of her memory in previous scenes, now the doctor says she's lost 95%, so we're clearly going backwards.
Well, at least the numbers are trending in a positive direction. A few more jumps and she could have all of her memories back.
Exactly. Well, they finally figure out she seems to be experiencing time backwards, although the doctor's first suggestion is that she's developed precognition.
I like that. That was actually pretty good.
Yeah, but it's like, we've already established that you're going to create a temporal machine. Yeah. So you should maybe think about putting 2 and 2 together and linking these problems.
She's also a very powerful telepath. So precog could just be another part of her natural abilities showing themselves.
Well, that is what they suggest.
It is good to see that they're actually treating what's happening seriously here. They're not just dismissing her.
Chuckles suggests that they start scanning for temporal anomalies. Kes also wants to try and help by studying the files on her activities on the ship.
Yeah.
Later, Tom comes to their quarters, which are pitch black. Remember? In the first couple seasons, we would constantly talk about how dark it was. Well, he's come into their quarters. The lights are off. I don't know why we're sitting in the dark.
Does everybody have quarters this big?
Well, she has a whole family, so maybe.
Oh, yeah, family quarters.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Tom and Kes have a pretty awkward interaction of Tom reminiscing about their relationship, but Kes not remembering anything about it.
Oh, that would be so crazy.
They're going through files about her time on the ship, which of course means a separate data pad for every single report, and they're all over the room.
They're
very dark
tiny
room.
Ones as well. I mean, we got past the iPad mini years ago. We're like at 12-inch screen pads now.
It's like each one is one of those little flip notebooks.
Yeah.
That we all used to have when we were kids, before the iPhone. Kes finds a report about having radiation poisoning on Stardate 509 something, and Tom says that was the beginning of the year of hell, when Voyager was under constant attack by a race called the Krenim.
Wow, a reference to it already. Mm-hmm. I know you have notes about this, Kim, so we'll leave that for later.
He says the doctor was offline for months. We lost a lot of good people, like Captain Janeway and B'Elanna.
And Carrie.
He does say and Carrie.
Yeah, finally they get rid of B'Elanna so he can get promoted, and he doesn't make it past the year of hell.
No. Well, because Kes doesn't remember anything, Tom has to tell her that B'Elanna was very special to him, and that Kes really helped him recover from that. He says a lot of the crew was exposed to radiation during the first attack when one of the Chronoton torpedo fragments leaked radiation into the ship. They were able to penetrate Voyager's shields because they were in a constant state of temporal flux.
Oh, we've got chronotons, temporal flux. Mm-hmm. This is getting good.
All the good things. This gives Tom an idea, and they head to sickbay, but on the way there's another flash of light, and Kes is now younger and holding a baby.
Yep.
Whoops. Harry asks Tom how it feels to be a grandfather, and Tom says, a lot better than it feels to have you as a son-in-law.
Ba-dum-pa.
Kes asks what the stardate is, and she realizes she's jumped back over 6 months.
Yeah.
She grabs Tom and heads to sickbay. She tells the doctor she's jumped back a total of 5 years so far, and now that she knows what's happening, she's able to get their attention easier. And also, this is where I took note that maybe they don't often listen to old people, and now she's young again, so they believe her a lot quicker.
She's young, got blonde hair, and is beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we listen to her.
Yeah. Well, she says she experiences a drop in temperature right before each jump, so she gets a warning. The doctor detects high levels of chronoton radiation in Kes's cells. She was inoculated along with the rest of the crew when the leak happened, and everyone was left with trace amounts in their bodies, but for some reason, the chronoton has reactivated in Kes. And I put in my notes, probably because of your untested temporal chamber. Duh.
Yeah, I like it when he tells Tom, your wife is traveling backwards through time.
And it's like, oh. Now we go to Kes explaining to the senior staff that it's like she came into existence at the moment of her own death without any memories, and she's been picking up new memories backwards. She says, your past has become my future.
As a sci-fi concept, I really like this in the Star Trek context.
Yeah, very good. The doctor has finally realized his temporal chamber reactivated the chronoton particles in her cells, taking her out of temporal sync with the rest of them. But now that makes me think, can't we just take note of this and not make the same mistake in the future, and then boom, the problem's fixed?
Well, that's probably one way of handling it, yeah.
Well, that's just not how we do time travel in Star Trek. Yeah. When something changes, it doesn't immediately change your surroundings. It might change somebody else's or the future, but it doesn't change where you are.
I think the Doctor is just so on point in this scene as he describes what happened as exposed Kes to a biotemporal field in a highly experimental, but nonetheless brilliant attempt.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He is always so proud of himself.
Oh, yeah.
The Doctor says he could stop the problem with the chronoton particles by purging her completely of the chronoton poisoning. Yeah. But Harry says the only way to do that is to know the precise temporal variance of the specific torpedo that caused the poisoning. And there's no data on this because the computer systems were all down when it happened.
And they don't make backups.
Exactly. The Doctor says we have to do something or she'll keep jumping back until she reaches a time where she doesn't even exist.
I have a note on that later.
Chuckles is now recording a log that Kes has remained in sync with them for 2 days, and everyone is working to find a way to help her. Kes and her daughter are working and chatting, and we learn that Linus isn't super maternal, though Harry apparently is a good dad.
Yeah, that I think would fit well with Harry.
I'm not sure what the point of this scene was, except Kes does reassure her that she's seen Andrew in the future and he's a great kid, so she must be a good mother. The Doctor interrupts them, saying he's erected a containment field that should keep Kes in their timeline.
Good plan.
So back to sickbay, and Kes is pacing around in her little containment field when Tom comes in to keep her company. We find at this point the Doctor is no longer named Van Gogh, or not yet named Van Gogh.
Yeah, he's called Mozart. I think I like the idea of the Doctor constantly picking different names.
Well, why the obsession with naming yourself after somebody else? I mean, pick a new name.
That's true, or make up your own name.
There's an episode of Amy Poehler's podcast, Good Hang, where Mike Schur, who is the creator and showrunner of The Good Place and also Parks and Rec, and I'm sure many other shows that I haven't watched, but he really specifically would pick weird names so that they wouldn't be, there's no way they would be anybody's name, and they made him read the list on the show, and it's quite funny. Do something like that, just pick some crazy-ass name. Or do something really crazy and call yourself Victor Newman.
Oh.
Or something like that. Since the actress playing Linus was on The Young and the Restless, so she would know who that was.
And that would be pretty good.
Very niche suggestion. Tom tells Kes the story of their wedding reception. He's just there to try to help jog her memory, which is not how it works.
Well, Tom's just trying to help, and he's often not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
No. He talks about how happy he's been with her. Linus comes in saying she's found something, but it's too late. Kes gets cold, and the Doctor tries to keep her, but she disappears. Or at least she jumps. I don't think she disappears. She must then go back to being regular Kes.
I don't know
how it works in the timeline.
Oddly enough, another thing with parallels where Deanna asks what happens to her Worf when he gets back to his timeline or his quantum reality.
Yeah, what would happen? Does she disappear in that, or does that timeline disappear? I guess that's possible, that she's unraveling time.
Oh, gosh. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I did kind of like this scene. I thought it worked really well with Tom just showing that relationship the two of them have. It sort of felt believable. And when she's fading out and they're trying to keep her stable in this particular timeline, I thought that the sort of the tension and the pacing of it worked well.
Yeah, it's very dramatic for sure.
Yeah.
Well, now we jump back to Kes giving birth to Linus, and we're on a shuttlecraft.
Oh, the squelching sounds were really something.
Yeah, it's unpleasant. And also the baby's head is the same size as Kes's head. This is a big baby. And Kes is so tiny.
They should have made the Acampa just lay eggs.
Fortunately, they don't make us really figure out exactly what's happening. Because the baby's coming out of something in her back. Kes tells Tom they need to talk. But before they can talk, they get a call that Voyager is under attack. And they quickly jump to entering Voyager in the middle of a firefight.
Oh, yeah.
The ship is already quite damaged as Neelix gives them a quick update. He says that Captain Chakotay wants Tom to work on modulating the targeting scanners to knock out the chronoton torpedoes. Kes realizes they're now in the year of hell, and she says that, but Tom doesn't know what she's talking about because they haven't labeled it yet.
Oh, yep.
Tom takes off to get to work, so Kes decides to tell Neelix her story. Later, Chakotay and Tom go to the mess hall where all the injured crew members are in order to talk to Kes, and she tells them she needs to know the temporal variance of the torpedo that gave her radiation poisoning. But Chuckle says the main computer has been offline for weeks.
Yeah.
So she suggests a biotemporal containment field, but there's just not enough power available to do that. Voyager's pretty shelled, and then Kes gets cold and jumps again.
That outside shot they do of Voyager as it flies by, is very disturbing. They're like whole sections of the hull that are breached. Very unsettling. And when they get back to the ship, you see there's just the corridors are destroyed.
Yeah, it's interesting to think maybe the Year of Hell would have turned out differently if this episode hadn't happened, or if this thing hadn't happened to Kes, I mean.
That's true.
Now we're in Neelix's resort program, and Kes starts to try to talk to Tom, but they're interrupted when B'Elanna enters, and she and Tom kiss. Before Kes can tell them her story, the ship is struck by something, and Janeway calls Red Alert. This is the first attack of the Krenim, and Kes tells Janeway on the bridge that the torpedoes are chronoton torpedoes in a constant state of temporal flux.
Yep.
But just then, the ship is hit again, and B'Elanna and Janeway go flying. Both are instantly killed.
Yeah, she jumps back to the first attack and the moment B'Elanna and Janeway die. That's some bad timing.
Or maybe good timing, because now she can take that news back with her.
Well, it's good timing for Chakotay. I mean, he gets to be captain again.
All right. Tom is devastated, of course, but he has to get back to the con so everyone else on the ship isn't killed. Kes tells them what she heard in her last jump about remodulating the targeting scanners, and that seems to work because they quickly destroy the enemy ship.
Oh, yeah, they take out the Kremen. Well-deserved as well for the Kremen in this timeline.
Later, the casualty reports are in and the news is bad. Also, the ship is in very bad shape. Chuckles tells Harry to get sickbay back online. He says we need to grieve later. Kes tries to comfort Tom, but it's a little bit too soon. Neelix comes in saying there's a radiation leak coming from one of the torpedo fragments still stuck in the ship, and Kes realizes this is her chance.
Yeah.
She heads to the torpedo to get its temporal variance, although Neelix tries to warn her off, but she goes anyway.
No stopping her.
So into the Jeffries tube she goes with no protective gear.
Nope.
And this is where I'm like, but she's going to be dead after this in this timeline. But I don't know if that matters.
If all these timelines are changing with just her presence in them, then it doesn't really necessarily matter.
Right.
It's the Miles O'Brien paradox, a visionary.
Well, that's what I mean, where every time she leaves that timeline, it unravels. You know, she's like basically unraveling this whole timeline. It's not going to exist at all anymore.
Well, that's the whole question of the quantum realities.
Yeah.
Each time one of these things happen, does it spawn another complete timeline?
Yeah.
Another complete reality that her dying in the Jeffries tube is now creates this whole branch.
Yeah.
Who's Tom going to end up with now?
There's only so many women on this ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, anyway, she crawls close to the fragment and gets the reading before she passes out and probably dies.
Right.
And then she jumps again.
I think that was the implication, that this ended up being fatal, but it doesn't necessarily matter to her.
No. I was going to say, is it a good thing she jumped before dying? But I mean, maybe dying made her jump. Who knows?
Oh.
Now we are back in sickbay, and the doctor is back to being mostly bald.
Yep.
She tells the doctor the variance of the torpedo, which he's like, what do I need to know that for? He doesn't know what he's supposed to do with that info.
Yeah.
So we go to another staff briefing. This time, Janeway is there, and B'Elanna.
Yay.
And also the doctor is wearing his mobile emitter again, because he wasn't wearing it in the earlier scenes. And then I was thinking, well, maybe it was the hair. The hair was hiding the emitter, or the hair itself was a new kind of emitter.
Oh, yeah. He had it fixed into a weave.
I think so. Well, Kes has jumped back to her so-called current timeline, saying she's gone back 6 years from when this started. The doctor explains what's happened, saying the Krenim attacks will happen in 11 months, and everyone is impacted by radiation poisoning and then inoculated, including Kes. But later, when he attempts an experimental and ingenious procedure to extend her lifespan, the biotemporal field activates the dormant chronoton particles, which takes her out of temporal sync.
And the doctor just has to get in another little line about how brilliant this idea
Every
was.
time he talks about this idea, he uses a different word to say he's a genius.
Yeah.
Well, now that they have the precise temporal variance of the torpedo, they can set up an anti-chronoton field and purge her system, bringing her back into sync.
Now, Janeway does comment that she's never come across, or Starfleet has never come across, a phenomenon like this. And I'm thinking, this is probably happening all the time. There's probably hundreds of cases of this happening right now. This is just one of your quantum realities. There's a billion people experiencing this. I expect the universe to be in constant chaos.
Well, you know how we had that episode, Coda, with the alien that would hijack people as they were dying?
Oh, yeah.
And they were saying, oh, does this explain all of these near-death occurrences where something happens, they see dead relatives or dead people from their past? Are they now trying to sort of, I mean, based on what you just said, are we now saying maybe sometimes when people forget things or they're having what appears to be dementia, that it's actually that they're displaced in time?
Well, in this case, yes.
I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying maybe that's what Star Trek was doing.
Interesting.
Well, as this meeting breaks up, Kes tells the captain about the Krenim. We're not concerned about polluting the timeline, I guess. But also, yes, please tell her and save the captain and B'Elanna.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Stay away from consoles.
Don't stand too close to that console, when they start shooting.
Stand next to Chakotay.
I like how in Star Trek we're never concerned about polluting the future timeline. It's like, that's okay. But we do not want to pollute anything before here because we might affect ourselves. In sickbay, we bring the chamber online and start the anti-chronoton bursts, and everything seems to be going well.
And the Doctor is getting to do something that he really loves. Irradiating people.
He really does like that. That is one of his favorite things. Well, unfortunately, Kes suddenly jumps again. Back to when Neelix and Kes first met the Voyager crew.
Oh, yeah.
Kes tells Janeway about traveling backwards in time, but before she gets very far into her story, she jumps again, and this time she shouts no in frustration before the jump.
In that scene, Neelix is behaving really badly.
He's behaving like early Neelix.
Yeah, he's behaving like a controlling predator. He's dismissing what Kes has to say immediately and making excuses for her. That was kind of disturbing.
That's how season 1 Neelix behaved.
Yeah.
He does not do that anymore.
It's no wonder she broke up with him.
Yeah, no wonder she dumped him. But also, by the way, Janeway was ready to listen, but then she jumped, so it didn't matter.
Oh, yeah, she didn't have any time.
No, but she wanted to listen.
Yep.
Well, now Kes is a child, back inside whatever planet it is that they were inside of in the pilot.
The Ocampa homeworld.
And she's with the guy she figures out is her father. She tries to tell him what's happening, but he thinks she's playing a game, and frustratingly, she jumps again. Now she jumps back to when she's being born, and then back again to before she was born, and then I guess to before she was even a fertilized egg, and then the screen goes to black.
Well, like the prediction from earlier, she's jumped back to the point before she even exists.
Yep.
That was really cool, actually.
I liked how the screen went black. I like it when shows do that, when they make use of a screen going black.
Yeah.
Well, then it suddenly starts rapidly jumping forward, through her birth again, and then back to when the Doctor was running the anti-chronoton bursts. And the cycle finally seems to break.
And she's back.
She asked the date and her age, and it seems like she's back in the proper timeline.
Yep.
Now we're having champagne in the resort program and celebrating saving Kes, I guess, even though technically this didn't really impact any of these people in the slightest. Well, but they're here for a party.
Well, I feel the Doctor should be rewarded for his medical heroics,
yes.
as he puts it.
Neelix is thrilled to hear that he's going to become a full-fledged security officer, although Tuvok says Kes's story is only one possible future because on each occasion of her jump, her actions altered the future.
Yes.
So Neelix says, oh, good point. Maybe I'll become chief of security instead. This makes Chuckles give him a little toast and Tuvok do a bit of a Vulcan eye roll.
Oh, yes.
That was
very
cute.
much so.
Yeah, I really like that. Everyone now is grilling Kes on what she knows about the future. She's pretty cagey. I think she's not really prepared to talk about B'Elanna and the captain dying and marrying Tom and then Harry marrying her daughter. She doesn't talk about any of that.
Well, especially as Tom and B'Elanna are standing there saying, oh, tell us what happens in the future.
Well, except then Tom says, I don't want to know. I want to be surprised, which, it kind of fits with Tom.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think even if you told him everything would still be a surprise to Tom.
You're probably right. Well, even though she doesn't want to reveal any personal details, she does agree to write a report about the Krenim.
Yeah.
She's learned not to waste any time based on what's happened to her over the last couple of days, and she runs off, leaving everyone surprised.
I think if you're a camper and you only live 9 years...
Yeah, you should never waste
then
a
you
day.
Don't want to waste time about anything.
Yeah, I mean, we probably should all take that advice. A slightly weird ending, but the end nonetheless.
Yes.
Do you have overanalysis?
Yes, I do. And I think the first thing, and this is just an observation, this feels like another episode dealing with the effects of Alzheimer's, like the Doctor in the Swarm and the confusion that these people are having.
Yeah.
And it just seems a little bit too real.
Yeah. Well, Star Trek touches on real stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of have to. That's where the really heartfelt stuff lies.
Yeah. It makes part of the drama.
Yeah. But I did find it frustrating that when she would tell the story as the young blonde, they listened to her. When she told the same story as the older person, they assumed she was delusional.
Yeah, that was a little bit disturbing.
But it's not inaccurate to how the world operates.
Okay, well, let's talk about some overanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing, the biotemporal field. Would this procedure work on other races as well?
Yeah, to make them younger.
Has the Doctor actually cracked a method for creating eternal youth?
Yeah, I was wondering that. Why wouldn't that work on everyone?
Yeah, and is this ethical? Which they kind of touched on with Kess's daughter saying, no, her mother agreed this was just part of her life.
Well, we don't know if it worked.
Yeah.
All we know is that it caused this other problem.
Yeah.
So he's still got some work to do. And they didn't, I feel like they were pretty careful to not make it like a fountain of youth. Like it wasn't going to send her back to being 2. It was just going to give her another year. So maybe it was just something to extend her life a little bit, and maybe it would do the same for other species.
So the Doctor could keep you going indefinitely. Just 1 year at a time.
1 year at a time. Well, yeah, I guess that's possible. Yeah. After a year, you do it again and then again.
Yeah.
But maybe not, because maybe the cells at some point will just start to degrade and you can't. Yeah.
And it could be very specific to Ocampa physiology.
Yeah, totally.
Then his excuse of not knowing everything about the Ocampa physiology would be incorrect. Then.
Well, by this point, he's maybe learned some things. But also, what was the deal? I'm digging into something I don't really remember, so this is a dangerous path. But what was the thing? Wasn't there something about Kess or the Ocampan being more connected to, like, plant life or something?
Well, with her telepathic abilities, she could be, yes. Because she could make things in the hydroponics bay grow, and she could also destroy them. But I don't know whether that was really something that the other caretaker was doing, or whether it was truly a ability of the Ocampa.
Well,
I don't know if that was answered in that episode.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it wasn't, because they didn't know how much they were going to use it in the future in the story. I don't think all of that was because of the caretaker. I think they do have some abilities, because they talk about it even when they're back on the planet, right? That some of the Ocampans believed that they had abilities back. Their ancestors had different abilities than they had. So I'm just saying maybe this thing that he's done is more about saving sort of plant-like life than about something like humans. You know, the Doctor is able to use plant cells in this case.
Oh, so Ocampa are actually plants.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get. That's why I said I'm going down a path I don't know anything about or how to get out of. Maybe it's just something about that.
I get your point, what you were saying, yeah. Okay.
Because you can frequently bring back plants that look dead. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Has anybody watered Kess?
Exactly. She just needed to be watered.
Right. Next thing. Now, I was thinking about this. How could she jump back to before she was exposed to the chronoton particles? But I guess, I'm thinking about that out loud. I guess she was actually time traveling. So she could go back to before the exposure.
Yeah. Somehow she was physically time traveling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I had that same problem with the first time I watched it. I was like, wait a minute, they're treating her, but the thing that hasn't happened to her yet, but it did happen.
Yeah.
It happened actually even as part of the time travel, but it also happened when she was going forward. It happened both times. It happened going forward and coming backwards.
Right. Because, when they treated her, she hadn't been exposed. But I guess as there's some physical aspect to her actually time traveling, she's bringing those chronoton particles with her.
Although that makes less sense that she goes all the way back to being nothing.
Yeah.
But
so she's born with chronoton poisoning.
But I guess the event still went for it. I don't know. Timey-wimey.
Wave your hand. It just works.
Yeah.
Next thing. Temporal Prime Directive. Now, would it not be the captain's duty or responsibility not to listen to any of the pre-knowledge that Kess can give her? I mean, she openly was questioning Kess about the future. Or is this more like the Prime Directive? We kind of follow it, unless we don't want to.
Well, there was something about that on the Memory Alpha page, too, that people were complaining that, wait a minute, how come all of a sudden we don't care about this, about screwing up the timelines? And like I said, we don't care about screwing up future timelines. But like if we go to the Strange New Worlds episode, the crossover one with Lower Decks.
Right.
The Strange New World crew, which is in the past, does not want to hear anything, right? They keep saying, stop telling us stuff. We don't want to know about stuff from the future. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what's happening on Voyager. And she doesn't tell them a lot of stuff, but she does tell them about the Krenim. And I guess from her perspective, it's also about self-preservation, right? She's trying to save herself too.
Yeah. Oh, agreed.
But yeah, I think we're a little fast and loose with that. We don't even address it, right? Nobody even says, should we know about this? No, we just forget it. We make a big joke about it at the end and the episode's over.
Right.
Yeah.
I would justify it by Janeway is in an extremely dangerous position. The whole ship is. And anything that can give you an advantage, anything, is worth following. So to quote Data, to hell with orders.
Well, okay, but let's think about it this way.
Yeah.
The weapons that they're going to be attacked with are playing with time.
Right.
So if they're going to combat them to try to maintain the timeline, they need to know about it.
Yeah.
Right? So I think you could maybe look at it that way. They need to do something in order to combat the time changing.
Yes.
There's my hand wave.
That's a pretty good one. So they're using temporal technology as a weapon. Therefore, we can use Kess's pre-knowledge as a weapon against them.
Yeah.
Because all is fair in love and war.
Yeah. Well, not all is fair, but yeah.
Next thing, minor observation. It's so good that we've gone completely over to centigrade in the future.
Boy, her body temperature is cold. 14, I think he says at one point.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cold.
Next thing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel this is another absolute traumatic PTSD incident for Kess in the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, all those people she knew from the beginning simply won't exist.
No, because she's going to save B'Elanna, and she's not going to end up with Tom, and Linus never existed, and neither did Andrew.
Right. It's kind of horrific when you think about it. It's like Children of Time. You just killed your daughter and your grandson.
Mm-hmm.
They just never existed.
That's a rough part of the story. And also the one where she kills herself in the timeline overall as well. The whole thing is, it's terrible.
Right. Well, she was acting as the doctor, so how many more of the crew die?
Yeah.
Wow, that is not the timeline you want to be on.
No, it's kind of why the ending, that's just a little bit silly. It doesn't fit.
Really?
Right? Well, because could she not have even said that, to herself even, or acknowledged that, I guess my daughter Linus and my grandson Andrew are never going to exist?
Ooh.
Like, could she not have even acknowledged that
true.
She had made a change that was going to affect that timeline?
Yeah, like Children of Time.
Yeah.
The fact that these people physically didn't exist anymore or wouldn't.
Well,
wow.
In Children of Time, they tried to save them in the end, except for Odo.
Yeah, but it's still...
here she was doing everything she could to get rid of them.
Well, she was the Odo.
Yeah, she was Odo in this story.
Okay, and I think my final point is, so we talk about having to fly across areas that could be dangerous or people who are more aggressive and avoiding certain areas of space. Now you know about the Krenim. Can't you just do that?
Yeah, just avoid it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't remember the details of how we run across the Krenim, but it was really interesting in watching this to hear Tom say, "You're of hell," and then I told you he said, "You're of hell," and you're like, what? How did he say it? And of course, when we would have watched it the first time, it wouldn't have registered with us either, because You're of hell hasn't happened yet, but we know it is going to happen. And what's interesting is that it doesn't happen until next season. We're still in season 3. It doesn't happen until season 4.
Yeah.
And so what Memory Alpha said is that Year of Hell was planned for the end of season 3 and the beginning of season 4. So it was planned to happen just in a handful of episodes from now. So it was obviously already written and already there.
That would have been a hell of a season finale.
And even the Krenim ship we see in this episode as well, which I have no memory of it, but I assume it's the same ship we will see later. So just interesting that they were sort of able to give us like a preview of that thing that's coming. And I wonder if we thought, oh, well, then that'll never happen because Kess stopped it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that would have been our opinion at the time.
I mean, that's quite genius.
Oh, yeah, that was a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, wraps up my overanalysis. I have no problems with any of the time stuff.
I don't have a lot. I do love a time episode, even when the time episode doesn't make sense. That's fine. I'm fine with it.
I still love Visionary, even if Mars O'Brien should be dead at the end.
I did think Kess's long wigs were a bit jarring because we went from the short wigs to the long wigs all of a sudden. And of course, I like the short hair, but also I like the short hair because you can see her ears. But I think this was on Memory Alpha. It might have been somewhere else. But I read that she was having trouble, Jennifer Lean was having trouble with the makeup on her ears. And so they started giving her longer wigs to cover up her ears so that they wouldn't have to put it on.
Yeah.
But she still had to have them for one scene in this episode when she jumps back to when her and Neelix first meet Janeway. But otherwise, her ears are covered.
I think that was one of the reasons why Michael Dorn, the character of Worf, looked different from TNG to the movies and to DS9, because he was fed up with all the makeup and the irritation it was causing to his skin,
Well, and also it took too long, probably. And then I had this note about, I assume that the original timeline she was in, Kes dies of radiation poisoning, which is a grim future for everyone. No wife for Tom, no girlfriend for Harry. No child for either one of them.
Well, I think Tuvok's summary is absolutely correct, that Kes's interactions as she time traveled backwards would affect those timelines.
Yeah.
So even if, you accept the concept of there are these quantum timelines branching off from these moments, some of them Kes is dead. Some of them the grandchildren don't exist.
And the last thing I have is, I can't explain this, but Tom with Kes and then Harry with Tom's daughter was creepy. I can't explain why, but it was creepy.
Okay, maybe I'll add some additional overanalysis here.
Okay.
I feel humans, or most of the other races, certainly the Vulcans, getting involved with the Acampa would be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Because they only live like 9 years.
It's a terrible idea.
You're signing yourself up for traumatic loss in
really quickly
8-9 years, if you're lucky.
And also your kids.
And then your children and your grandchildren. Mm-hmm. You'll be going through generations and you'll be in your 60s. Yeah. I feel this is part of the weak story point with the idea of the Ocampa and Kes. If you like, the practicalities of it are horrific for other races. For Ocampa, this might just be fine.
It's just normal. Yeah. They don't know any different.
You live this short life and the next generation carries on, and that's it. But from a human or a Vulcan or some other race's perspective, it's like they're gone in no time.
Yeah. Just a couple of years, really, because if Tom married her when she was, 4 or 5?
3, 4?
Not 3. She's 3 in the timeline with Neelix.
Yeah.
And she's only got 6 more years from there. And I think they said that it was a year from then.
Oh, yeah, it was like 11 months. Yeah, right.
And then it would have to be some time after that happened before he got together with her. So it would have only been, and you would have known it would only be a few years and have just accepted it. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a choice you could make, but it's a difficult choice that you're making for yourself.
Right. I think that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. The worst would be you're signing up for your kids to die before you. And I don't know who wants to do that.
Generations of your children.
Yeah. Your kids and your grandkids and their kids. That's a lot.
Well, if Tom's in his mid-30s and he lives to 70, that's 4 generations of your offspring that you're going to see die.
No, thanks. Okay, so I'll move to women in the future. And I do like that Kes ultimately saves herself, and she's not a damsel in distress, right? She's the one who goes and gets the torpedo variants, and that ultimately saves her.
At potentially the cost of her own life.
Right. And every time she lands somewhere, she immediately goes to the same people to start the story again. And she doesn't give up. And I do like that. I do think they've done a pretty good job of making Kes self-sufficient, where I think in the beginning it seemed like maybe she was going to be quite helpless when she first got to the ship, because Neelix sort of painted her that way and put her into that corner. But that's not what they've done with her. So I do like that. I mean, other people treat her like a child, but she's proven to be a pretty self-sufficient character, which I like.
Yeah. Well, the majority, I think, of the Kes-focused episodes have been pretty good.
Yeah, the majority of them have. I agree. In Janeway's Leadership Corner, I guess I already talked about this, but it's interesting how everyone does listen to Kes when she tells them what's happening, except for when she's old. Yeah. And then everyone is just like, oh, she's old. But even Janeway, like I said, in their first meeting, she does take it seriously and tries to listen to her. So I think that's good leadership. And also that thing in Star Trek where weird crap happens all the time, you got to be willing to accept when somebody tells you a weird story that it might be true.
Well, this is sometimes where I think Star Trek, for the story writing, almost falls down. If somebody comes out with like an outlandish story and the Star Trek admirals, it's usually admirals because they're always evil, are like, oh, that's ridiculous. You're not going to believe that. It's like, it happens all the time.
But it happens all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, that one with Harry, right?
I'm sure this is happening all the time, constantly.
Yeah. Well, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Time travel. Kes, really great science fiction story, Absolute thumbs up. Loved it. What a great episode. This is a really well done Trek episode. I like the drama. I like the pacing. I thought the story was a really good idea. And I absolutely loved that they led us down this path where she does end up jumping back to before she even existed. And then they bring it all the way forward to where they are today. Really good storytelling, great sci-fi, great Star Trek. 2 thumbs up.
I agree. I give it a thumbs up. I thought it was very good. I also like the time travel episodes. But like I said, I did have to watch it a second time for it to make sense because I kept thinking, I don't understand how this would work. If she died in that one, point that she jumped back to, then the future doesn't exist. And then how is she jumping back if she died? But that's not how Star Trek tells time stories. You are like in a bubble. You are protected in your bubble when you're the one who's traveling through time while other things might change around you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely liked it. I thought in the beginning, I thought it started a little bit hokey.
Yeah.
Because you've got the old age makeup and the bad wig and the doctor's got hair. And I just thought, okay, what goofy thing are we doing? But then it turned into quite a serious episode, which Voyager frequently does. It has a weird beginning and then it just turns into some crazy dramatic episode.
Yeah, I think even more than Deep Space Nine, Voyager starts off with these episodes where you're like, okay, where is this going? We've talked about it before. And then all of a sudden it does this weird 180 and you're like, okay, this is great.
Yeah. I would just have liked a little bit more drama in the end if we'd acknowledged what had changed or what, what she had potentially lost in her future. But we don't like to get too serious.
I'm wondering, this is just idle speculation. I haven't looked it up or read about it. I'm wondering whether there was a deliberate emphasis on not having endings like Deep Space Nine.
Maybe. They were trying to get back to TNG,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up Season 3, Episode 21. Come back next week for Episode 22. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube at ReBingeIT, or you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.